right, so why don't we go ahead and get started? This is Julia Santagata from Rumsey Electric. I am one of the automation managers here in the specialist group within Rumsey, and we have two presenters today. Hopefully George will get his sound working here in just a minute. But Steve Huck and George Bradley are two of our longstanding automation specialists, and they have put together some great information about getting started with the PanelView 5000. As you guys may know, it is one of the newer platforms that Rockwell introduced. They introduced it a few years ago. However, within the last probably 6 months or so, they have really loaded the features into it with some of the newest releases. And it is definitely something that the time is right to start looking at. So we're excited to bring you this kind of getting started. The way this is structured is we have about 10 minutes of PowerPoint introduction just to get you guys grounded on this family if you're not too familiar with the PanelView 5000 family and how it's different from the PanelView Plus. Then about 15 minutes showing you live in the programming software how to get started and build a little program and use some of the new features that are different than the PanelView Plus. And then the guys are going to go ahead and download that to a PanelView and then show you those features working live. So we do have about a full 45 minutes, but it is broken into a couple of different chunks. All right, so I will turn it over to you, Steve, if you could get us started.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thanks. All right, so let's just jump right in. Currently, Rockwell's electronic operator interface portfolio consists of the PanelView 800, which is designed and optimized to work with the Micro 800 and MicroLogix family. So a small system, very inexpensive. It's configured with the Connected Components Workbench, which is a free software. And they're available in sizes ranging from 4-inch to 10-inch, so 4, 7, and 10-inch screens. And they are low cost and easy to implement. In the middle, as we get into the more advanced terminals, we have the PanelView Plus 7. You might notice there is no PanelView Plus 6 here. The PanelView Plus 6 has reached end of life for Rockwell, so they're weaning us off at this point. There's a period of time while we're still able to manufacture them, but their end of life date has been announced and is next year, and we're working toward that. So the PanelView Plus 7 is the established HMI that probably many of you are familiar with. PanelView Plus 7 comes in two flavors or two terminal models. That would be the standard and the performance. The standard supports a single controller and is limited to a maximum of 100 screens and 500 alarms. It's available in sizes from 4 to 15-inch, with like 4-inch, 9-inch, and 12-inch being the widescreen models. And it is DC powered only. The performance doesn't have the limitations of the standard, so you can communicate with more than a single controller, and you can develop more than 100 screens and 500 alarms. It's available from 7-inch to 19-inch. Has dual Ethernet ports for DLR. Back to the standard, that is available with single or dual, but all the performance are dual. And it's available with conformal coating and stainless steel bezel options, so there's some more advanced options. You can also get it with AC or DC power. All PanelView Plus 7s use the FactoryTalk View Studio for Machine Edition software. Now we'll shift gears and we'll talk about the PanelView 5000. The PanelView 5000 is our most advanced terminal right now, and it will be the focus of this seminar. There's two flavors, the PanelView 5310 and the PanelView 5510. We're going to dive in, show you the difference between them, and tell you why we think they're a better way to HMI. So, the PanelView 5310, probably the most important thing to remember about the PanelView 5310 is, like the PanelView Plus 7 standard terminal, PanelView 5310 can communicate with a single Logix processor. There's single Ethernet port, no dual ports for DLR on the 5310. There's an on-screen navigation button, so it's a software button that pulls up the navigation menu that's built into the 5000 family here. And it can have up to 100 screens in an application. It's available in 5 screen sizes from 6-inch to 12-inch, with the 7, 9, and 12-inch models being widescreen. They're designed for smaller applications, and it's sort of that right-sized visualization solution. When we look at the PanelView 5510, This is the bigger brother, the full feature bigger brother of the 5310. It's available as either touch only or touch with keypad. Can connect up to 4 Logix processors per application, both the 5310 and the 5510. When I say Logix processors, what I mean is they communicate with a control Logix or a compact Logix processor only. The reason for that is they are programmed and integrated directly into the Logix program, directly into your ACD file, and therefore that is what they communicate with. So if you're dealing with control Logix and compact Logix, these are great options. They have dual Ethernet ports for DLR. Navigation button on this one is a hardware button. It's on right below the screen, so it doesn't take up any of the on-screen real estate. And they're available in sizes from 7 through 19 inch. There's also some additional ratings and certifications for the 5510 over the 5310, like Class 1 Div 2. Let's shift gears here, and we'll talk a little bit about the software we use to program a PanelView 5000, and that's Studio 5000. Studio 5000 is more than just a new name for RS Logix 5000. It really is a true automation and design environment. Most of us think Studio 5000 is the software that we use to access or program a control Logix or a compact Logix. But Logix Designer is only one part of Studio 5000. As we look through the parts that are available today, we'll start off at the top, Architect. Architect is a simplified graphical interface to interact with your controller's I/O. So you can sort of set up a graphical interface of the different control Logix and compact Logix controllers you have out in the field. And you can use that interface to access the applications or to shift information from one controller to the other. If you want to add on instructions that are in one controller and drag and drop them to the other, that's what Architect does. Logix Designer, I don't think I have to talk about. We know what that is. That's the traditional RS Logix 5000 where we do all the programming. ViewDesigner is where we're going to focus most of this presentation and then our demonstration on. This is the development software for the PanelView 5000. The rest of the tools in the suite, we have Application Code Manager. This is a tool to let you manage, share, and reuse code between projects. The Emulate, this is the continuation of the Emulator software we've had in the past. This allows you to have a virtual controller, and so you can do testing without actually having hardware present. And then the last one there, the Simulation Interface, this is a newer edition. This enables true virtual commissioning, allowing you to connect up your Logix applications to popular simulation software like Functional Mockup Interface or FMI or MATLAB and others. So that's the whole suite. We're going to go ahead and focus on ViewDesigner because that's what we're here for. Let's move on. I hear a little echo.
Is that George joining us?
I guess whoever just got their sound working, if you can mute, that would be great. All right, so jumping into the ViewDesigner interface, let's first start with, it's included with Studio 5000 and no extra cost. There's no activation that you need separate for it. If you have Studio 5000, you have ViewDesigner. Looking at the graphical interface, we'll start up at the top left. It has a Project Explorer. This is where the project is organized. This is where you can set up the navigation menu that is built in, where you can put your assets together and basically organize everything. It's very similar in form and function to the controller and logical organizer in the Logix Designer. Just below that, we have a searchable toolbox full of thousands of graphical objects that you can build the application with. In the middle, we have the main canvas. This is where you design your screens and interact with all of the objects you drop in there. Up on the top right, we have a property panel. The property panel is where you can interact and bind the properties of the elements you drop on the screen. So if you drop a button on the screen, everything that you can do with the button is available in the properties panel. If you drop a graphic on the screen, everything you can do with that graphic is there. Just below that, we have a Graphic Explorer. And this is a really nice feature because it gives you a list of everything that's on the screen, every graphic by name. So if you have objects that are grouped together, if you have objects that are maybe overlapping, it's a very quick way to access and highlight or select any item on the screen at one time. And then finally, whenever you need to access the tag browser to pull up and bind yourself to Logix tags, it pops up. And like the toolbox, it has its own search bar that makes finding tags easier. let's go ahead and take a look at some of the integrated features. So first and foremost, the PanelView 5000 has the highest degree of integration between an HMI and a Logix controller. It allows us to do things and interact with the controller in ways that are impossible for any other HMI. So the PanelView 5000, it doesn't just understand Logix, it is Logix. It's part of Logix. So the tags are browsed directly from your Logix program, no importing, no re-entering. But what's a little different about that than maybe some of our other options is this is a live link from ViewDesigner back to your ACD file or your processor. And changes that are made in Logix automatically update in View. Direct access to those Logix extended tag properties, it's a huge benefit. And we're going to show that as we go through the demo. It means that things like the min-max values, engineering units, and descriptions, when you configure those in Logix on the tag, it carries over automatically up into ViewDesigner, and they're fully accessible at that point. This not only decreases the time for development and documenting your HMI, it also ensures a consistency with the Logix controller being the single version of truth. Another integration functionality and where we're highly integrated with Logix is going to be in alarming. Alarms defined in the controller appear on the PanelView 5000 automatically. I'm going to repeat that. As either tag-based or instruction-based alarms are configured in the controller, they are available on the PanelView 5000 without any configuration on the HMI side at all. The pre-built alarm banner and the alarm manager, summary, and history screens are completely customizable, but can be used right out of the box with zero engineering time. PanelView 5000 can handle up to 4,000 alarms per controller. So 5310, it's a single controller, but 5510 can do 4 controllers, so 4,000 alarms per controller. And the alarm tables allow for things like sorting, filtering, and zooming in or getting alarm details. Finally, the alarm history can be exported as a zip CSV file to either an SD or USB media without the need to stop the running application. ViewDesigner includes an emulator for the PanelView 5000, so you can test run applications on your PC before downloading to the terminal. Downloading and uploading is also simplified to a toolbar button with no additional utilities necessary. Also, ViewDesigner projects, they're contained in a single file that can easily be backed up, shared, even emailed. No folder structure or archives need to be made if you need to move the files around. A simple example of Logix integration is the bindable caption for any pop-ups. The caption can include text that's typed in, extended tag properties, and expressions to deliver a more dynamic and informative operator experience. Here, the caption includes the motor name as configured in the Logix tag @name property, extended property, and the current state of the motor, whether it's running or stopped. And that can all be done just by dropping in that information in the caption. The PanelView 5000 has a lockdown, non-Windows based OS. This not only speeds up the boot time, but it eliminates IT concerns about patching, antivirus, and system administration. Despite that, the PanelView 5000 still provides the PC-like functionality that's needed without the drawbacks of maintaining a computer. Send email notifications or to alert maintenance or engineering. PDF files can be displayed on the PanelView 5000 to help with troubleshooting or to clarify operator work instructions or standard operating procedures. Trending and data logging are available, and like the alarm history that I talked about before, the data log can be exported to SD or USB without stopping the running project. PanelView 5000 terminals can have up to 500 users. The users can be grouped by roles, and those roles then define access to the functions, screens, and even individual objects on screens. Security is not limited to screens as in past products. We can go down to the individual object. You can log in using passwords, or you can set it up to allow pins. And auto logout can be configured through the security administration in ViewDesigner before you download, or it can also be referenced by using the auto log off HMI device tag, and you can programmatically control how long it takes before it auto log off. From a maintenance standpoint, there's some advanced diagnostics that are built in that we can't get from our other HMIs. Controller and network diagnostics are automatically displayed on the PanelView 5000. You don't have to create screens. You don't have to connect anything. It's just there. Dynamic error messages. They pop up whenever something isn't accessible in the runtime. So an errored object, you would click on that error and it would bring up a dynamic message telling you exactly what the tag it's supposed to be referencing and why it can't reference it. Dramatically helps with troubleshooting when something's wireframed on the screen. VNC can be used to access the PanelView 5000 remotely. We're going to do that in the demo to show off it when we're actually using the PanelView. And it can be enabled or disabled without stopping the running application. You can also load an application or firmware from an SD or a USB media without needing control flash or even a PC. So I think at this point, we'll jump into the demo. So if you give me a second, I'm going to go ahead and end the slide.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Well, while you're doing that, I just, I'll give an opportunity for anybody to ask any questions initially about what you just talked about. I mean, I think there's a lot of different things there that may sound similar to things that you can do in a PanelView Plus, but when you demonstrate this tight integration, I think everybody will start seeing the difference. But the Windows 10, the pre-configured screens and toolbars and error messages, I think all that stuff is pretty neat. Hopefully everybody else does as well. We did have one question come in over chat. Would you happen to know, Steve, if you can configure an NTP time server?
At the present time, the time you can get the time from the controller. So if the controller can access the time server, which we do have the ability to do with control logics and compact logic, then yes, because you can get that controller time from the controller.
Great, thank you.
It's not directly referenced from the PanelView though. It's just then you point it to the controller instead of.
You point it to the controller to be able to use it.
Right.
Okay.
So for the demo, I'm going to start from scratch. Just going to open up Studio and do a new project. When you look at the new project, most of us are used to seeing this because we go into Logics, but we're just going to click on View. And in here, we already have our PanelView 5000. We know it's a 9-inch that we have sitting here. It's a 5510. I'm using version 7. I'm just going to call this webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and start the project. As it loads up, I'm just going to remind you a little bit about the layout. So you have the Project Explorer on the top left, the toolbox with all the objects and graphics are down underneath of that on the left. Main canvas will be in the middle. And then on the right side, you'll have the properties panel, which we're going to use a ton, and then the graphic explorer. And every once in a while, the tag browser will pop up.
Steve, I noticed when you, I noticed when you were just selecting there the PanelView size you were using, you were picking the PanelView size, but could you open an application that you already developed and just pick a different size and it will work?
Yes, and I'll show that in just a second here once we set up the first part. So,
okay, great.
The first thing that you'll notice when we start up here is that the project properties opens up in the center of the screen, and there's a very good reason for that. The one thing that you need to begin developing a ViewDesigner application is you need to set up the reference to the controller, and then you need to point it to an ACD file. So I'm going to go ahead and set my name up here for my reference, and I'll just be real original. And then I'm going to browse out, and unlike real life where everything's going to be in a real place, I'm just going to go to my desktop and grab my application. And that would be really all I need to do to get started developing. But because I know some of the other details, I'm going to fill them in. For instance, the HMI to controller path, that's the IP address of the controller. So I can browse to it if I don't know it off the top of my head, which I don't. So this will launch Factory Talk links, and I'll just go out to my Ethernet, grab my controller, and then the bottom part, the controller, the emulator to controller path, on the off chance that you're doing development on a workbench or a test bench and you're using a completely different controller, you can set it up so that it's going to point to where it needs to out in the field, but you can point this one to a different controller and do it on the test bench. In our case, it's all one controller, so I'm just going to go ahead and point it to the same controller. I'm going to apply that. Since we have a 5510, I could configure another 3 references, but we only have the one controller set up and running right here, so we're going to go there. So what Julia's point, what she had asked earlier, we're going to jump now to the application tab. And this is where, in this particular new application, I'm going to set the path to the panel view so that it knows where to download to the panel view so that I can just do it from the download button. And I'll do that pointed at my panel view here. But if this was a pre-made project, I could come in here and change from the 9-inch to any other size that we offer or that you want to use, and then tell it what we're going to do. Are we going to scale it to a fixed aspect ratio? Are we going to stretch it to just fit the screen? Or do we leave it exactly as it is and then there'll be letterboxing around it? So those are the options that you can do there. Down at the bottom, the one last option that I wanted to point out is the keypad and the keyboard size. So we do offer two sizes of on-screen keyboard and keypad, and the normal size is generally pretty good and fine. But if you have an application maybe where people are wearing gloves or you have operators with very large digits, the larger keypad and keyboard side, by checking that box, you would then use that throughout the application and it would be a larger size on the screen. I'm going to leave everything the way it is, hit OK, and get out of that. Before I start jumping into development, because we're going to use VNC, just going to take one more step here and come into the security administration, and I'm going to set up a password for full control of the PanelView 5000 with VNC, and that way I'll be able to show it to you on the screen. So let's jump in. Our Project Explorer, we have our navigation menu that starts here. User-defined screens, that's the stuff that you're going to build. Predefined screens, that's stuff that comes already. Again, completely customizable. You can make changes to them, but they're already here, and they're going to be on that panel view when we open up and run through the program. Assets, if you're going to build your own add-on graphics, we'll talk about them a little bit later. If you're going to add PDF files or your own custom images, this is where you drop them into these folders, and then they're accessible throughout the program. Data logs, project events, we'll get to that as we go through the demo. First thing we're going to do, since we're on a screen here, is we're just going to go grab an object. So in the toolbox, I'm going to expand out our general equipment. I'm going to click on our tanks and containers. It is searchable, and I could start typing in, but I know I'm going to look for a tank. So I'll just scroll down here, and I'll grab this one. It's tank assembled, and I'll just plop them on the middle of the screen here. And so now we have a tank object on the screen. We take a look at our properties, and I'll expand out most of the properties here. So I've selected this object on the properties. Automatically, we have certain features because this object has been built to have them. We have a level property. So I don't have to animate the level. It's already part of what's here. I can bind that to a tag and it will show it. I can adjust the max level and the min level, or I can bind those to tags and it will come directly from the Logix controller. Actually, if you look, everything, visibility, colors, X, Y, height and width, everything is a bindable object. So if I want to, I can just start binding these to Logix tags and Logic tag properties, and that will allow the control to be completely handled by the Logix processor. And I'm going to start doing that right now. So let's go ahead and bind the level, and I'm going to go in and search our program. So we'll go down and expand out our Logix controller, our controller tags, and I know I have a bunch of user-defined types called tank in this application. So I'm going to go find my tank 1, and I'm going to find my level, and I'll just add that. I've now bound the level to that. I can now go ahead and bind the max. I don't know what my min and max are for tank 1 because I basically borrowed a sample program from Rockwell. So I'm going to go ahead and just expand out the properties of that, and I'm going to bind the max and the minimum to the extended properties of the element in Logix. So I'll bind my minimum. So now my level will be defined by the object in Logix, and its min-max is already there and carried over. So maybe we want to do something a little fancy with the level color. Maybe we don't just want to leave it as it goes up and down and stays blue. So I'm going to jump into animations here, and I'm going to add a color table. And again, because this object is a smart object and it knows what properties are built into it, I can decide whether I want to apply this color table to the fill color, which would be the background of the tank, or the level color, which would be the liquid that's going up and down the tank. I want the liquid color. I can set how many states I want in my color table, but you can also do that on the fly, which I think is easier, so I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to bind this to that level tag again. But this time what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll divide that by its maximum. And I'll multiply that by 100. So basically, since I'm not sure what my tank level is, I've just made it so that whatever I'm going to do with this color table is based on a percentage of 0 to 100%. So I'm going to leave the default blue. That's fine. We'll say it's water. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, as it gets lower, as it drains, let's say anything between 11 and 25%, I'm going to want to change that color and make it yellow. And then as things get worse, nobody's done anything, the valve's still draining, I'm going to go ahead and do from 1 to 10, because they better hit it before I hit 0. And I'll make that red so I can scream at them. So at this point in time, I've animated it so that the color will change based on the levels of level properties that I don't fully understand because I haven't even gone into Logix to check it yet. This is all fine and good. I've created this, but maybe I'm like, okay, I'm going to have an overview screen and I'm going to want to have a tank detail screen that looks at maybe multiple tanks. So let's first off just copy our screen. So I'm going to copy it and then I'll just paste it back in here. And let's just make sure that screen 2, it looks exact same. So let's rename screen 2 and we're going to call this one our tank detail screen because I'm real original. And then we're going to go ahead and while we're here, we'll just rename this guy to our overview screen. Back into our tank detail screen here. So we've got our tank. Now I want to add some other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab some common controls. Let's get some text on the screen so I know what I'm looking at. I'm going to drop in a text display and I will just move it next to it. Maybe we'll line it up. You can see as I move things around, the bars actually come up and they show me whether I'm level with things and stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and bind this since I don't know what the tank is called. I'm going to bind it to the tank property name. So I'll go back to tank 1 and I'll bind it to its name. So there, I know that's our name. I'll go ahead and bring another one in and I will, again, since I don't know exactly what this tank is called, I'll line it up so that it's the same there, slide it so that it goes to the end. And we'll bind this guy to the description in Logix because I'm assuming whoever programmed it, they must have put a description in. And now we got a nice graphical interface showing us the level, but let's do a numeric display. I'll drop a numeric display in, line it up with the others. And I'm just going to bind that to the level again. We know it's going to be the same tag, but we'll just choose current level. And because we're being fancy, one more. And we'll put it right about there. And we'll bind this guy to the engineering units so that I don't even have to type that in because I'm not sure which one it is. So we'll come in here, go to our current level, scroll down, find ourselves the engineering unit. So right now I'm just binding a bunch of stuff up. We're gonna throw on a numeric input to change the set point, but this is really just something I'm doing to show an error because I don't have a set point tag set up for this guy. So I'm gonna grab a text display and drop it on here, and we'll actually use it as text. And I'll just say enter level set point. Great, that's nice. And drag him in here. And then for this guy, we're going to go ahead and bind him to that level property. And then I'm just going to add a .sp on the end because that would be my set point if I actually created a tag. This will show you then how those error messages work and how they guide you to help. Plus, when I go to download the project, I'll be able to show you how it's errored and hyperlinked to what's wrong with your project before you download. So the last thing I want to do here, well, let's just copy this guy. Because I don't know where my level might be on the tank, I'm going to cheat and just throw this guy in here, and I'll make him the actual level so that I can go back up and make the level whatever I want. And I didn't line that up, so I'll line it up so it's level. And now one nice thing that you can do in ViewDesigner that's kind of neat is if I select these objects and I've got 2 numeric inputs and 1 numeric display, what I get is all their common properties. So these are common properties. So if I want, I can come in here and say, yeah, I want a decimal place for everybody, and I want to put trailing zeros in. And now all of a sudden, all three of them adjust at once. Everything looks the same. I can do the same thing with text. I can do the same thing with formatting, so you can make it all look good. Lastly, before we're done here, I'm just going to drop a couple buttons on so that we can control the valve that opens and closes the screen. So we're going to come in here for its name, and we're going to say open valve. And then, because I'm lazy, I'm going to copy and paste it. And we're going to just call this one close valve. Now, I've been setting this all up, and I've been attaching everything to tank 1's properties. But it's a tank details screen, and I've got 2 tanks. So maybe what I want to do here is change it so that this would be a generic screen that I can pass the parameters through based on whichever tank I want to look at. So to do that, it's fairly simple. I can come in and hit this expand to get to the property definitions for this particular screen. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in tank tag as a name for my placeholder tag. And because it's a ViewDesigner and we understand logic's types, I can go ahead and say that this is always going to be a user-defined type of tank. So when I go to call this screen and I have to choose which one I want, it's only going to give me the options of tank to choose from. At the same time, my controls for the valve, they're not in that user-defined type. So I'm just going to put a tag placeholder for valve here, and I'll fill that in. So let's go ahead and select everything on the screen. And I'm just going to go up to Edit, Find and Replace. And actually, it would be easier if before I do that, I'll copy what I want to look for. So I'll go ahead and copy just the beginning of that guy, come back in here, and since I'm now just on the one selected graphic, that's not good enough. I'm going to do the current tab. That's everything on this screen. So I'm going to find everywhere that we have tank 1, and I'm going to replace that with my tank tag. And I'll replace all. So everything on the screen has now been replaced, looks like. Tank detail screen, lots of different stuff. Good. I'm happy with that. The last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up the button behavior. I can right click and set the button behavior. You can also do it from the events tab of the property thing. So when I open, I'm going to set a tag to 1, and my tag is going to be valve because that's my placeholder. And when I close, and we'll just do it from events here, we'll go to button behavior. I'm going to set a tag to 0, and it's still going to be valve because I was a lazy programmer. So here we go. We've got our screen set up. It's ready to go. It's been stripped out of all of its tank 1 properties, and it's ready to be used as a template. Let's jump back to the overview, and let's make this guy a little smaller so that we can have 2 of them on here. And we'll drop him here, copy and paste, and then we'll drop him next to him. And since I have them selected, I'll go ahead and do a find and replace. And I'm going to replace on just the selected graphic everything there with, let's see, well, we'll just copy and we'll paste. And I know that it should be 2. So replace on just that selected graphic, everything. So now I have tank 1 and tank 2 configured the same. I can't tell them apart because I don't have text on top of them. I guess I should do that so that I know which one's where. So again, I don't know what they're called for real. So I'll just line that guy up and bind him to the name. So we'll bind him to our tank 1 name property. And I'll copy and paste. Copy and paste. And line those guys up. And now we'll just come in here and we'll get rid of the extra one because apparently I decided to do that twice. And we'll change him to tank 2. We'll go back to this guy because I think that yep, I had copied and pasted the name in by accident, so we'll do that. All right, so now I have my display here. Let's make a button. Anything can be a button. So this is a tank. I've got animations on it. I've got things going. But if I right click and go to button behavior, I can tell it that when I click on it, I want to go to a screen. Well, what screen do I want to go to? I only have one other user-defined screen besides my overview. That's my tank detail. Automatically, because we set up those properties, they come up here. So I'm going to say when I click on tank 1, I want to go to tank 1 for my tank substitution there for my tank tag. And on my valve, I want to go to tank 1 open. Let's just do the same thing for this guy. So we'll go ahead and navigate to a screen. We're going to navigate to the exact same screen, tank detail, but this time we're going to go to tank 2. And this time, when we go to tank 2, we're going to go and open up tank 2 valve. So I've got that set up and that's there and that's great. Let's just add another item to the screen here just so we have something that looks overviewish. We'll go ahead and drop a trend on. And I'll probably have to just resize it a little bit. So in the trend, we have the ability to set up the min and max. Again, I'm not sure what my min and maxes are because I'm grabbing everything out of Logix. So I'm just going to go to my tank 1. And I'll go to my tank 1 level property. And I'll go to my tank 1 level max. And I'll leave the min 0. And we'll just make it go a little bit longer. We'll go to 300 for the time span. I'll leave everything else default, and we'll just add some traces. So traces, pens, whatever you want to call them. First, we'll go ahead and we'll add our good friend tank 1, and we'll leave him blue. That's fine. We'll give him a little star on the end. And then we'll go ahead and we'll add tank 2's level. So we'll just scroll down to tank 2, choose our level. And that color's terrible. Let's pick purple. I don't know why. I'm picking purple.
So while you're doing that, Steve, I'm seeing a very significant trend about just being able to create objects, not needing to know extensive details about
exactly
the names and programs and everything else, that you're just browsing right into the program, grabbing a tag, and it is pre-populating all of this stuff for you.
And in a real
essentially.
World, yeah, essentially. And in a real world, you know all of that stuff. But the idea is if you're configuring it in the controller already, why configure it again here? Or if you're putting it in the controller and then you change it later in the controller, why should you then have to come up here and modify it? It's just going to change automatically. And we'll show that in a second. Just one more thing, if you can bear with me, I'm just going to add a quick data log. That way we can trend some of the trends will be that. We'll just take tank 1's data log, actually. We'll leave tank 2 as live data only. And I'll just throw another tag in here that has nothing to do with anything. And that way we have something else on the data log. So I got a data log. So far, we've configured 2 screens. We have an overview screen. We have a tank detail screen that can be used for tank 1 or tank 2 based on which one of these we click on. If you take a look here in our in the Project Explorer at our navigation menu, this is the automatic navigation bar that's going to pop up that comes through and we can move. Well, for starters, I renamed this after it was already there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it screen 1 there, but on the name on the navigation menu, I'm going to call it Overview. And that way it's called Overview.
So I'm sorry, Steve, just so I'm grounded here, that navigation menu, that's the navigation menu that was mentioned in the PowerPoint that's just automatically created, right? And now
I'm not editing it. Yeah, I'm not going to edit it. I'm going to leave the default values and everything the way it is. The only thing I'm going to do is decide if I want to position certain things, certain places on it, and then it'll just be there. The one thing I think I'll do, just because we have our overview screen here, is I'm going to give access to the tank detail screens directly from there as well. So because it does allow you to set up a structure, a folder structure, I can come in here and I can call this new folder tank detail, if I learn to spell. And I can slide it on up here. And now I'm going to grab my tank detail screen and I'm going to drop it into that. At the time that I drop it in that, I'm going to give it a separate name here. I'll call it detail 1. It again tells me, well, which tank are we going with? So this one's going to be 1. And I need to do that valve too, or else I won't be able to open my valve when I go this way. So I'll scroll down a couple clicks and get my valve. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put an enter or a carriage return between tank 1 and detail for the caption so that it's not just one massive word there. I'll grab the exact same screen. I'll drag it into the exact same folder. This time I'm going to call it tank 2 detail. So over here, I'll assign those to the number 2 tank. I'll assign the valves to open up on my number 2 valve. And again, I'm just going to add that there. And you know what? Just for fun, I'm going to come in here and I'll add that there too. So, okay. So all I've done is I've set up a couple things on the menu that I want to have that just so I have the ability to go directly to them without having to use the paths or the buttons that we've created on the screen. But at this point, we're pretty much ready to go ahead and download it to the PanelView and start taking a look at things. So I'm going to minimize my results down here so that we'll be able to see what happens when I go to download. So this is the download button, and I could just click it and go. Go ahead, Julia.
I think before you go ahead and hit download, can we pause for a minute and just see if anybody has any questions? This is obviously a little different than the way we're doing things in the PanelView Plus and Studio. I'm sorry.
Yeah, in View Studio.
Yes.
For ME. Sure. So if there are questions.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to chat them in or ask them, or something that Steve didn't show that you're wondering how you might do here as opposed to when you were programming in PanelView Plus.
Well, while we are waiting for those questions, I'm going to go ahead and communication. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, do it.
And I'm just going to choose to download. I already have my path because I chose it. So I'll download. So while this builds and goes over and downs, it does tell me I have 2 warnings, no errors. Those warnings are those set point tags that I made up to give us warnings. So as that dumps in here, we'll let that go ahead. The one thing I do have to do is make sure that I have VNC. Yeah, I do have my VNC up, so I should be able to hop on there as long as I remember the password I put in. So the PanelView is rebooting that nobody can see, but I can. And as it comes up with our application, we're done. So before I jump to it, let's just take a look at what happened when you either verify the project or when you go to download it. I get this invalid tag error message here. And I knew it was going to happen. I did it on purpose. But I'm looking currently at my tank overview screen, but these are on my tank detail screen. If I go ahead and I click on it or double click on it, it goes and it highlights exactly what the issue is. Not only that, over in my properties pane, it's highlighted exactly what my problem is. So I can look here and it says it's an invalid tag, and this is the invalid tag. Fix it, then download. Well, I already downloaded it because I skipped over. It's not going to stop it from running. It's going to give me an error that I want you to see. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. We're going to open up VNC. With just a little bit of luck, it will connect. I do have to make sure that I enabled VNC on my computer. And I did, so that's good. And we'll just go back here. And I need to put in my password. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm not going to make it too much bigger because I don't want to distort it. VNC doesn't do a great job of scaling for us here. But here's my overview screen that we created, right? We have tank 1 and we have tank 2. Both of them are showing levels based on where they're at. The names are filled in because it was in my Logix controller. I didn't call it tank 1. I just put that property there. And I've got my trend screen. And you notice that my tank 1, which was blue, trend line goes back much further than my real-time tank 2. That's because it's coming from the data log. When it doesn't have real-time data, it's showing me what was on the data log. I don't have data log value for my tank 2, so I only have that. Couple other things to point out, and we will get to. You might notice up here we have this menu bar. It was there while we were developing. You can customize it, you can change it, but we have a back and forward button that lets you bounce around based on your movement. Although it is a hard button on the 5510, there's also a mate to that menu button or that navigation button here that you can just click if you choose to. And I'll do that so you know when I'm clicking it as opposed to clicking the actual hardware. I'll stay on my overview screen for a second. And in that bar, we do have 2 unacknowledged alarms, which I didn't set up any alarms. I didn't set up anything about alarms. I didn't even create an alarm screen. But we have them and they're there, and we'll check them out in a second. Let's go ahead and navigate to our number 1 tank, or our tank 1 here. And what do we see? We see that it's tank 1. Its description coming out of Logix is large water tank, and it's got 275 gallons in it. Here's that set point tag, and this is what we were talking about with the error messages. So if I click on X, you can see that I get a very detailed piece of information here. It says that this numeric input is trying to read this specific tag from this controller at this IP address. And it's failed because the member SP that is specified is not part of the tag structure. And here's the tag property listed out again. So now I can grab the nearest maintenance guy or engineer and I can say, hey, this isn't coming up and it's this tag in the controller. Could you go and see what's wrong with it? That's very powerful. And it's a lot better than what we've done in the past and what most people do, which is just a wireframe and you have no idea what was there and what should be there. So we've got our tank 1, everything's here, but let's just go back to our overview and let's click on tank 2. And lo and behold, surprise, this has different information. It's still the same screen, but we're passing through all that stuff from tank 2. And in this case, we have tank 2. It's a small ingredient tank, and it's got 165 pounds in it. Sure, pounds, why not? Let's go ahead and open the valve on this guy, and let's let him drain a little bit, because I told it when it gets down to 25%, it goes yellow. So I'm going to close the valve and leave it yellow, because now we have a different color. I'm going to head back to my overview screen. And you can see here that our graphics are all following, but let's go ahead and check out these alarms now. What's going on with alarms? So as I click alarms, we can see here that the small ingredient tank level is low at 125 pounds. Close the valve to avoid damage. Well, I closed the valve, so we're okay. I guess I could acknowledge it. But before I acknowledge it, I just want to show you, if I come into Logix and I go and I find that tank, and I say, okay, it's an ingredient tank. Oh, look, the ingredient name is hops. So what if I just come in here right now, live with the controller, and I say, it's the small hops tank. And I'll go ahead and enter that. All right, so now we'll minimize this. Well, my alarm now says small hops tank level is low. Now, it's just that. We're great.
I'm impressed. That was instantaneous.
And if I go back here, now I have my small hops tank. So those are some of the cool things that are built in. Again, I'm going to pull up that navigation and I'm going to say, okay, I can go directly to my alarm summary and I can see what's going on. If I want the details of that, I can click on it and hit the details. Now I can get a little more information. If you're not using Logix-based alarms, either the tag-based or the instruction ones, there's some great features there, including the ability, once you've set this up in the controller, to associate additional tag values with the alarm. So let's say that it was a level and you wanted to associate with that the positions of the valve. Was valve 1 open? Was valve 2 open? Was valve 3 open? You can do up to 4 associated tag values with that, and they'll just be part of the details. So I can say, okay, yeah, I'm low, but I'm low because these valves are open when they should be closed. We got to go check that. I'm going to go ahead and just get out of my details here, go back here. Now, some of that stuff we talked about with the diagnostics that's built in, it's hard to do the network one, but I can definitely show the controller one. So I'm just going to flick the switch on my controller to program mode. And what you're going to see here up on the top bar is I get a little picture of my controller, I get my icon, and I get my little warning. Something's going on. I click on it. I didn't program this. This is automatic. So here we have our controller status. You've got all the information that I created, the reference name, it's the name of the program that's running in it, as well as its IP address, firmware, everything. But here you go. The thing that we're drawn to, the thing that we're told is a warning, it's in program mode. Well, that's why things aren't working. So I can go ahead and put it back into run mode and then cut it back into remote run mode. It goes ahead, updates. You can see that that's gone away. I no longer have that problem. If I wanted to, if I didn't have a problem, but I still wanted to know some information, I can go into my settings and I can go to my controller settings. And here I can get all that same information that we just saw, only there's no problems. This is just so I can figure out what firmware I have or what was that model number again, and do I need to do anything with that? How many alarms are set up at the moment and what's going on?
So Steve, I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Relative to alarms, is there a way to update the alarm manager message like you updated the description?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you, not really part of this because we're back in Logix here, and we could probably do an entire 45-minute session just on tag-based alarms, and we darn well should. But here we have in our alarm manager, which is part of Studio 5000's Logix Designer. I'm going to go ahead into my alarms here, and we'll go ahead and we'll grab that tank to low alarm, not the low. We'll go to the low one because that's the one that we actually have right now. And what you can see that I did was I dropped in these descriptive things. I said, what's the description of the tank? And then I put in the word level is, and then what condition is it? Is it low? Is it low? Is it high? It's grabbing that automatically. And then I can grab the value that it is. So I grab its input value and I can set up how that's going to look with how many decimal places and whatever. And then I can throw in the engineering units, which I did right here. So I could just as simply change those things in the alarm message, because if you build your alarm message to actually be referencing your extended properties of the tags, then anytime you change those extended properties, it automatically changes the alarm message. Is that what we were looking for? Yeah,
I believe so. Nathan can go ahead and confirm for us if he'd like. And then, and we are running out of time here, so I'll ask you to get us wrapped up. But there was another question relative to alarming, related, unrelated, but just controller-based alarming. Can you confirm that is available with FactoryTalk SE version 10? It is, right?
Yeah, if the extended properties features that we're doing here and tag-based and instruction-based alarms in the controller can all be used with FactoryTalk View SE version 10 or higher. Obviously, we're now at 12 we just released, so version 10, 11, and 12. Not in ME. ME cannot reference those extended tag properties, and ME, so FactoryTalk View Studio for ME, when we're doing stuff for PanelView Plus 7, that can't happen. But if you're using SE and you're running it on a computer-based system, yes, you can still reference those same amazing extended properties, including alarming. If you got to do it in a closed HMI system, then that's what the PanelView 5000s are for, whether it's 5310 or 5510. So I'm going to just jump back into the presentation here and just get to the last two slides to let you guys get here. First and foremost, when you look at the latest version, as I said, ViewDesigner's latest version is version 7. It includes 2 new sample application or sample projects that can help you sort of jumpstart. The demo application, which isn't what we used here, it's very, very detailed to the features of the product. It allows you to see how all of those features work. That's you can play with it and go from there. The other thing is the add-on graphics, and I didn't spend a lot of time on add-on graphics. It's been a thing with the PanelView 5000 family since the inception, but if you're familiar with the usage of an add-on instruction where you take your instructions you're building and you consolidate that down into an instruction that can now be instantiated or developed over and over again and dropped into projects, you can do the same thing with your graphics, and you can build up your own library that then is available in the assets of the Project Explorer there. So they have a very detailed add-on graphics sample as well, which includes all of these and more add-on graphics that Rockwell's already developed, and some really cool features and things that you can integrate into your application. The last thing we'll leave you with before we take any remaining questions is just this resource slide here, which when we send out the slide deck, you'll have this. Links to YouTube videos. There's a separate YouTube page for PanelView 5000 and ViewDesigner. You can get all of those from this link. the actual Rockwell software website, if you go to it and go to the Factory Talk Studios, the Studio 5000 section, and then go to ViewDesigner, there's some great information there as well. The Product Compatibility and Download Center has some great faceplates and pre-built objects. You can just search for device library and they'll be there. And then the sample code website, which is also linked here, just search PanelView 5000. There's a bunch of sample applications there. Lastly, the Getting Results Guide was updated with version 7, so you can get it from the literature library on the website or that link, and that should help people get started. Now, if there are any questions, we can handle questions and go from there.
So we did have another question come in about any way to migrate the PanelView Plus 7 applications to PanelView 5000. And so today, whoop.
Okay, I will answer it. The answer is, there is not a way for you to do it. There's not a way for me to help you do it. However, if the use case is there is a way for Rockwell to help you do that. So we can take that offline. I would say contact your Rumsey account manager and or your ASG team member that you're used to dealing with. Let them know you're interested in that, and we'll talk through the use cases that Rockwell's interested in. And if you fit that bill and if you want that, that can be something that might be arranged. But for the most part, if it's like, can I just take what I have and import it? No, the graphics that we used to use weren't scalable vector graphics, right? They didn't have these smart objects that are already pre-built with the properties in. So what you would get is pretty useless. Now, what you can do is if you have images and you like those images, you can bring those images in. But again, they're not scalable vector graphics in most cases. So, we just started offering that in SE, I think in 12. I think it was like one of the new things. So chances are you're better off starting from scratch. And you can see it's not very difficult. They've made things, very user-friendly. There's ways to do this that might not take too long. I only had about 40 minutes here, and yeah, that's not a real project, but it's enough to show you some of the powerful things that you can do in a very short period of time with a short number of clicks. So, but yeah,
Great.
take that offline. Anything
else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm seeing, as compared to like a PanelView Plus 7 performance, I'm seeing a whole lot of benefits here, and I'm not really seeing drawbacks. Are there limitations, or what would the reasons be that would require sticking with a PanelView Plus 7 implementation?
You have to talk to something that isn't a CompactLogix or a ControlLogix.
That's it?
If the answer to that question is yes, then yes, for sure, this is not the right product. Do you have to use alarms that aren't controller-based alarms? So whether you're using the alarm instructions or whether you're using the new property functionality of the newer controllers where you can just check the box and add alarm properties directly to a tag, if you can't do that, then yeah, this isn't the right tool. The only other caveat would be at the present time, probably the only thing that we don't have here that we do have with maybe a PanelView Plus 7 performance would be the ability to have an FTP server. So we can store those alarm logs and we can store those data logs on the SD card, or we can put them on a USB stick and you can sneaker net them over to your computer, but you can't FTP them over to somewhere else if you need to then manipulate them and do stuff yet. It's definitely on the roadmap. It's just something that wasn't as big a priority as some of the other functions that they've given us at this point. So other than that, I can't really think, if you say, yeah, I've got a CompactLogix, I got ControlLogix, that's really all I use. This probably you should take a really hard look at this. I mean, you don't have to buy anything. If you've already using a CompactLogix or ControlLogix, you've got Studio 5000. Go ahead and install ViewDesigner and get started and see what you can do.
Good question. We had another one come in, Steve. Can you set up a calibration screen to be able to change offsets?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I didn't put any security into my application at all. right? I just left it so that it's wide open, but you can secure down access to these screens so that only the right people can get there and they can get to what they're supposed to get to, and they don't even see the rest of it, and that's fine. The other thing is there's a lot of calibration stuff that's built into it that we've never even had before. I didn't spend any time on it, but the fact is there are tags within the HMI that can be used so that you can go in and tweak the red, green, and blue of the display so that you can tweak the color to exactly what you want. If you have a color specific application, or if maybe you're in an environment where for whatever reason, the color doesn't look as the way you want it to look on the screen, you can actually tweak those either programmatically from the controller, or you can tweak those right from within the panel view. And so there's all kinds of calibration stuff you can set up. And yeah, you can absolutely, if you can do it, if you can have those tags in Logix, then you can do it in ViewDesigner, and you can secure that screen down and the right people can access it. So it should not be an issue.
Edmund, did that answer your question? I just want to make sure we got you squared away. And while I'm waiting for confirmation from you, anybody else as we kind of wrap up here, other questions, things that are at the forefront of your mind, you're wondering as you kind of think about whether you want to start toying with this PanelView 5000 family? Okay, great. That did answer your question. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we did run right to the very end and a little over. I appreciate everybody. No problem. I think it was good information, Steve. Everybody joining in here. If there's anything that you, I guess a couple of things. If there's anything you saw here that you think a colleague or somebody else would benefit from, like I said, the recording will come out via email in the next day or so. So keep your eyes out for that. Feel free to share it. Also, Automation Fair at Home is coming up, and there will be some sessions that will touch on this family. There's some hands-on labs, I think, if they're still available, but if you haven't registered for Automation Fair at Home, there will definitely be more information available for you at Automation Fair to keep you kind of learning about this family and this next generation of HMIs. And then last but not least, this is one of our Tuesday series. And actually, Steve Hook is next on the list as well. He'll be talking about Thin Manager on Tuesday of next week, right, Steve?
Absolutely.
So if Thin Manager and continuing on the HMI path is of any interest to you, please check out the website and go ahead and register for that one or any of the other Tuesday classes.
And just a self-plug here, if you are thinking about the PanelView 5000 or the 5510 or the 5310, because of that VNC option that we have, Thin Manager can work great with these units, and you can take those screens and share them anywhere they need to be within your organization, even on mobile devices. So it's come on back for the Thin Manager one on Tuesday, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Awesome. All right, everybody, with that, we'll wrap up. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Thursday, despite the dreary, rainy weather, and a nice rest of your week. Thanks. We'll see ya.